We are taught early on that endless accommodation is a virtue. The logic is simple. If you carry the heavy loads, avoid conflict, and make yourself useful to everyone else, you will be rewarded with respect and safety. Consider the fable of Deo the donkey. Every morning, he woke up before the sun to help the other animals in the valley. He carried heavy wood for the horse, pulled the goat's cart through the mud, and gave up his own meals to ensure everyone else was comfortable. He believed his generosity was his power. But when Deo finally collapsed from exhaustion, his legs shaking and his stomach empty, the valley didn't rush to his aid. The horse laughed with his friends, and the goat ate fresh grass. The animals didn't love Deo. They merely relied on his inability to say no. This same fragility exists in our pursuit of safety. A sparrow once found a sheltered home inside the hollow of an ancient, silent temple bell. She built her nest twig by twig, convinced she had found a permanent fortress. But life inevitably rings the bell. The thunderous vibration shattered her nest in seconds. Her security was based on the assumption that the bell would never serve its actual purpose, leaving her terrified and homeless when reality finally intervened. Constant accommodation invites exploitation, and hiding in safe spaces leaves you fragile. True agency requires a departure from these passive instincts. When Deo the donkey finally reached his limit, he did the hardest thing imaginable. He refused to carry the horse's load. He expected anger. He expected to be cast out. Instead, the horse simply carried his own wood. The goat pulled her own cart. The valley continued functioning perfectly. The other animals weren't helpless. They were simply taking advantage of a creature who refused to set a limit. As Deo rested and protected his own time, the dynamic shifted. By choosing himself, he became a solid presence in the valley, and the animals who once used him began to treat him with actual respect. You see this shift in the story of a beggar at a train station. For years, he asked for pity and received almost nothing. One day, instead of asking for a handout, he plucked wildflowers from the tracks and offered a flower to anyone who gave him a coin. This is a visualization of exploitation. When you give without requiring, there is no reason for the other party to contribute. But when you enforce an exchange, the scale snaps into equilibrium. The beggar wasn't begging anymore. He was trading. He forced the world to acknowledge his value by refusing to give his flowers away for nothing. People treat you according to the standards you set for your own time and energy. It is your boundaries, not your favors, that define your value in their eyes. We are often paralyzed by a fear of inadequacy, believing we must be flawless to be worthwhile. A farmer once carried 2 clay pots from the river every day. One was perfect, but the other had a small crack and leaked half its contents onto the dirt by the time they reached the house. The cracked pot lived in shame, convinced it was a failure. But that leak was hitting seeds the farmer had scattered along the path. It was growing a vibrant trail of flowers that the perfect pot could never cultivate. Its flaw was the specific mechanism of its unique value. This principle extends even to catastrophic loss. Arev, a young carpenter, lost his father, his home, and his tools to greedy relatives, all in one winter. Sitting in a broken cottage, Arev had nothing left to rely on. That total loss acted as a forced eviction from a dependent life. With no safety net, he used river clay to fix his walls and built a thriving business with his bare hands. The traits you view as flaws often contain your greatest potential for utility. Similarly, the moments that look like devastating losses are often the very events that force you into independent strength. We often assume that monumental goals require grand, sweeping talent or massive, chaotic bursts of energy. When a village needed a staircase built up a mountain, a strong young man named Wei hauled massive, heavy stones, exhausting himself in a sprint to the finish. Meanwhile, an elderly widow named Lin committed to carrying just 1 small stone every single day. Wei burned out in weeks, leaving his rocks at the base. Lin ignored the weather and her own fatigue, placing 1 stone a day until she successfully built the entire highway to the peak. You find the same principle in the story of Marco, a restless young man. He was challenged to carry a glass filled to the absolute brim with water through a loud, chaotic village without spilling a single drop. Marco didn't succeed by trying to control the noise or the crowds around him. He succeeded by hyper-focusing his entire mind purely on the water in front of him, ignoring everything that wasn't the immediate present. Grand talent fades, and chaotic action leads to burnout. But relentless, hyper-focused consistency over time produces results that look like magic to those who only work in bursts. The external world is indifferent to your comfort. Life will ring the bell, and time will pass regardless of how you spend it. An old shopkeeper once taught a boy that while a watch can be priced, the time inside it cannot. Millions of dollars cannot buy back a single wasted second. The most effective builders in history share a common psychological framework. They reject the instinct to be nice or safe, and instead prioritize boundaries, the utility of their flaws, and relentless consistency. This photo shows Elon Musk, a figure who notoriously ignores conventional industry boundaries. He didn't build a private space program by seeking the approval of his peers. He did it by enforcing a vision that the world was forced to adapt to. Steve Jobs famously leaned into his own abrasive nature and perfectionism, traits many viewed as flaws. He used that rigid focus to cultivate a specific, uncompromising standard for technology that changed how the world operates. Jeff Bezos utilized the principle of the Widow Stone. He built his empire by prioritizing long-term, compounding consistency over immediate, flashy results, often willing to be misunderstood for decades while the stairs were being laid. Napoleon Hill, seen here, observed this pattern nearly a century ago. He noted that greatness is determined by the internal refusal to be shaped by external noise. Success never comes from waiting for the world to recognize your goodness. It comes when you decide your own worth, protect your own time, and start carrying your stone.